Before we get on with the podcast, I'd like to mention that I now have 3 books for sale on Kindle. Recommended Reading for the True Conservative, Bad Democrat, and now Evil Liberal. All available for $3.99 or through Kindle Unlimited. Now, on with the podcast.
friend of mine. Actually, no, I'm not going to call him that. It's not appropriate. I'm going to call him a male acquaintance. Let's do that. A male acquaintance of mine with whom I have never had a dalliance said to me, you know what? If you lost a couple of stone... I said, the rest of this better be a fucking equation. If you lost a couple of stone, we could probably go out. I said, only if the couple of stone I lost was me fucking head.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Science Wednesday, June the 24th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and Professor Feynman. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Varney and Company picks it up right now. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. If you're a socialist, you should be happy. If you're a moderate Democrat, you should be worried. If you're a Republican, you may see some opportunity. 3 far-left candidates won in New York Tuesday. Democratic socialists Claire Valdez and Daria-Lisa Avila-Chevalier, they won. Progressive Brad Lander, he beat sitting Congressman Dan Goldman, and that was a landslide. The overriding theme of their win, anti-Israel, and they were egged on by Mayor Mandani. He said he's out to change the Democrat Party. The New York elections were a defeat for leaders Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer. New York is now the socialist capital of America. War news. President Trump and Vice President Vance say Iran's nuclear facilities will be inspected. The director of the International Atomic Energy Agency says the memorandum of understanding says explicitly that inspections will be supervised by his agency. Separately, President Trump is threatening the oil companies. He says there's no excuse for price gouging at the gas pump. He believes gas prices should be falling more quickly. While the price of oil is down today, we're looking at $70 a barrel, and falling is down a couple of bucks. That's about 3% today. The price of gas, that stopped falling. Regular still averages $3.92, same as yesterday. California, $5.53. Look at diesel, though. It has dropped below $5 a gallon. Diesel now at $4.98. Stocks, well, a little higher after 2 days of losses. The Dow's down 30, but the S&P is up 13. The Nasdaq's up about 100 points. You better look at Micron. It was down 13% yesterday. It's up a little this morning. It reports after the bell. It is one of the most significant reports in this cycle. They better not disappoint. Bitcoin, the quote now, 62.4. That's your quote. The 10-year Treasury yield coming down. You're below 4.5% at 4.43. That's quite a big drop there. The 2-year Treasury, 4.17%. All right, on the show today, more on the fallout from New York's elections. Mainstream Democrats feel threatened by the rise of the socialists in Congress. They're not sure socialism plays well outside big blue cities. We'll bring in the former mayor of Miami. His city is surely a big, if not the big winner from the World Cup. Miami has turned into a gigantic fan party, and the city has 2 big stars playing in the next couple of days, Ronaldo and Lionel Messi. The former mayor, Francis Suarez, is counting the money. He's on the show, too. And we'll dissect the latest from the tournament. Another shock. England could only manage a draw with Ghana. But there you have it on the screen. The aforementioned Ronaldo scored 2 goals for Portugal and announced to the crowd, "I'm back." Wednesday, June 24th, 2026.
Thanks, Stu. Nonprofit News Now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Because that's what conservatives become when they start integrating their empathy with discernment. They stop reacting. They stop explaining. They stop dancing to the liberals' tune, and instead they start observing. They begin to pull back and watch, not from a place of detachment, but from a place of growing awareness. They start asking themselves, wait a second, who is this person really? Why do I always feel worse after talking to them? Why do I feel like I'm disappearing? Recognition. That's the first crack in the liberals' control. It's subtle, but it's profound, because you can't manipulate someone who sees the game. You can't gaslight someone who trusts their perception. Once the conservative recognizes the pattern, once they name it, they begin to regain their sense of self. And that's absolutely terrifying for the liberal, because liberal control is predicated on unconsciousness, on the other person not knowing what's happening, on the other person believing it's their fault, or that if they just do more, things will get better. But once awareness enters the picture, everything changes. The conservative starts researching. They read books, they watch videos, they talk to people who understand. And suddenly, the confusion lifts. The fog begins to clear. And what was once this overpowering emotional roller coaster becomes recognizable as a pattern. a manipulation loop designed to keep them off balance. And here's the truly powerful thing. The liberal has no idea how to deal with someone who sees them. Not just sees through the mask, but actually sees them. Because underneath all the bravado and posturing is a frightened, disintegrated person who spent their life avoiding themselves. Liberals aren't just afraid of rejection, they're afraid of being known, of being truly, authentically seen. Because to be seen is to be vulnerable, and to be vulnerable is to risk annihilation, at least in their mind. And so when the true conservative steps out of the fog and says, silently or aloud, I see what this is, it threatens the entire illusion. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. You don't have to fight the darkness. You just have to stop pretending it isn't there. That recognition is not dramatic. It's not a big confrontation. It's quiet. It's internal. But it changes everything. From that point on, the conservatives' behavior starts to shift. They're less reactive, less emotionally entangled. They stop feeding the drama. They start setting boundaries, and the liberal feels it immediately because they're incredibly attuned to shifts in power. They sense that the grip is loosening, that the puppet strings are slipping through their fingers, and so they escalate. They may become more demanding, more desperate, or they may discard the conservative altogether, looking for someone easier to control. But either way, the conservative has changed. They're not the same person. They're knowledgeable now. And once you know, you know. So the first and perhaps most essential way a true conservative dismantles the liberals' control is by seeing, truly seeing. Not just with the eyes, but with the mind and the heart aligned. They recognize the illusion, they understand the game, and they decide finally that they're not going to play anymore. There's a reason people struggle with the concept of boundaries, especially those who are deeply empathetic, those who feel a moral obligation to be available to others, to listen, to support, to accommodate. And in many ways, that's admirable. It's rooted in something noble, like a desire to be good, to be generous, to care. But the problem arises when that generosity becomes a vulnerability, when it turns into a kind of psychological open-door policy that liberals are particularly adept at exploiting. And that's the dilemma that the true conservative finds themselves in. They mistake unconditional availability for being nice. They confuse self-sacrifice with virtue. And the liberal, well, they take full advantage of that confusion. See, liberals don't really understand the concept of enough. They're driven by an insatiable need to consume emotional energy. They want access, not just to your time, not just to your attention, but to your very sense of self and boundaries. Those clear lines that separate where you end and someone else begins. Those are perceived as threats, not because boundaries are aggressive, quite the opposite, but because they imply that you belong to yourself, and your emotional availability is conditional, that your presence is a choice, not an obligation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now on Varney and Company, this is the part of the victory speech from some socialist butthole in New York.
Our party needs to admit that Joe Biden's hug Bibi strategy was a catastrophic failure.
Right.
I believe it made us complicit in genocide. Bob.
Okay, there it is. I believe it made us complicit in genocide. What is that? That's an arbitrary claim. He offers no evidence, no proof that there is any genocide going on anywhere, much less with the in the Middle East. So, how do you handle it? You go to work and somebody's saying, oh, well, we're, complicity with genocide, blah, 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 blah. It's an arbitrary claim, and you can demand proof. Well, that's what they do with us. Whenever a Republican or a conservative makes an arbitrary claim, they try to shut it down by demanding evidence and proof. So we simply return the favor. Hey, Mr. Butthole Congressman, what proof, what evidence do you have that there is genocide going on anywhere? Back in a minute.
Happens. The unexpected, the uncalled for, the unintentional. We've been damaged emotionally, damaged spiritually.
It may be your business. It may be your heart that is broken today. It may be the number in your bank account that is screaming, you are broke.
You can break physically, you can break mentally, you can break your heart, you can break your spirit, and all of those are going to leave a mark. But the mark that they leave can be the mark of victory, or it can be the mark of defeat.
It is staying with the breaking that produces the blessing. It is not what you go through that determines where you end up. It's who you listen to. Because I think right now, you are walking through a valley between two voices. One is wisdom, one is worry. One is gratitude, one is grumbling. One is blame, one is faith.
Because every time you break, and in every way that you break, while it's a chance for you to give up and for you to fall apart, but there's also opportunity to get stronger, and get smarter, and get faster, and get tougher, and get more stable, and get more resilient, and get better.
Whatever experience you're having right now, it has not come to stay. It has come to pass. Sometimes you have to just back up and go within yourself and pray and meditate. Go away, clear your head, and then come back and look at it from a different vantage point. Don't operate while you're under the spell or the effect of what's going on. Don't allow your emotions to control you. We are emotional, but you want to begin to discipline your emotion. If you don't discipline and contain your emotions, they will use you. You don't have to force yourself or motivate yourself to think negatively, to be depressed, to beat yourself up over the head, to feel loaded with guilt. You don't have to make any effort to do that. Your mind is on automatic. It will do that by itself. But if you want to begin to move into your own personal greatness, you've got to be willing to go against the tide. You've got to be willing to harness your will and say, in spite of this, I'm in control here. I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm not going to let this destroy me. I'm coming back.
The only person that's going to make a drastic change in your life, whether that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, the only person that is going to dig you out of your hole is who? You. You have to do it for you.
You've got to become courageous to stand up within yourself, to face it and step forward.
We all get a taste of that victim mentality, the why me. You can become the victim of the situation or the victor of the situation. You need to be the master of your emotions, not let them affect you. You're the dictator. You're the captain of your boat, whether you let things affect you in a negative way or a positive way. I don't lose. I only win or learn. In life, there's only winning or learning. All your problems become gifts once you learn them.
And some of you have allowed adversity to make you stop. And I'm telling you right now, don't give up. I'm telling you right now, don't give in. Get through it. Execute, execute, execute. In the midst of adversity, execute. You're going to work through this. You're going to get up. You're going to get dressed. You're going to get out. And you're going to do what you've been called to do. You're going to be what you called to be. And you're going to prove that everybody that tried to break you, everybody that tried to kill your dreams, you're going to prove all of them wrong. And if you can work through your pain, I'm guaranteeing you on the other side is the reward. Pain is not permanent. Pain is temporary.
And that was a little motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now a little meditation. And that was a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Professor Feynman.
Imagine lying flat on your back on a hill far from any city, looking up at a perfectly clear night sky. The stars are scattered across the darkness like salt on black velvet. It is a sight so ancient, so universal, that it connects you to every human being who has ever lived. Now, I want you to ask yourself a very simple question. As you look up at that vast, dark canvas dotted with lights, what is it that you are actually seeing? Your first answer is probably the universe. You are seeing the universe. But let's push on that for a moment. If the universe is everything that exists, every galaxy, every star, every planet, every atom, then what is that blackness between them? Is that blackness part of the universe? It must be. So, the universe isn't just the sparkling lights. It's also the immense, dark voids that separate them. But now, push a little further. What is beyond the last star? What is beyond the last galaxy, in the direction where there is absolutely nothing? No light, no dust, no atoms, no particles, just a total, absolute absence of anything. What is that? Is that still the universe? If the universe is everything that exists, then a void where nothing exists cannot be part of it, can it? But if it's not part of the universe, then it must be something else. It must be something that isn't. You have just stumbled onto one of the most disturbing, persistent, and deeply confusing questions that the human mind has ever grappled with. The question of what lies outside of everything. the question of what existed before there was anything at all. For most of us, the concept of nothing is a comfortable, simple idea. It's an empty box. It's a room with no furniture. It's a blank sheet of paper. We use the word all the time. There's nothing in the fridge. I have nothing to do today. But in physics, in philosophy, in the raw machinery of reality, nothing is the most slippery, unstable, and perhaps impossible concept there is. In fact, the deeper you look, the more you realize that nothing might be a bit like trying to catch your own shadow. The closer you get, the more it runs away from you. Think about that empty box. You say it contains nothing, but does it? Does it contain air? Yes. Okay, so you suck all the air out. Now it contains a vacuum. But does that vacuum contain light? If a single photon from a distant star zips through it, for that fleeting moment, it contains something. So you build a perfect box, an indestructible shell, and you place it in the deepest, emptiest region of intergalactic space, far from any stars. You open it, let any stray particle escape, and then you seal it perfectly. After 1,000,000 years, you go back to it. Does it contain nothing? No, it contains space. The box itself defines a region of space. But what is space? Is it a thing? We tend to think of it as a stage, a passive backdrop where the drama of matter and energy plays out. But physics tells us that space is not just a stage. It is an active participant. It can be bent. It can be stretched. It can be warped by gravity. It can ripple like the surface of a pond when two black holes collide. This fabric of space itself, this thing that can curve and twist, that is not nothing. It is a something. It is a fundamental structure of reality. So, to have true nothing, you can't just remove the matter. You have to remove the stage itself. You have to remove space. But now we've hit a wall. Because to remove space is a bit like asking what is north of the North Pole. The question starts to lose its meaning. Where would this nothing be if there is no space to put it in? The concept of location itself vanishes. This is the first great mystery. The universe is not a collection of things sitting in an empty void. The universe is the void. It is the fabric. The galaxies, the stars, the planets, they are not decorations on the fabric. They are part of the fabric, like wrinkles or ripples. When you look at that dark space between stars, you are not looking at nothing. You are looking at the very substance of existence. Now, let's rewind the clock. Let's take this understanding and run time backwards. If the universe is expanding, if those galaxies are all racing away from each other, then in the past, they were all closer together. Run the film back far enough, about 13.8 billion years, according to our best calculations. And you reach a point where everything is crushed into an infinitely small, infinitely dense point. A singularity. This is what we commonly call the Big Bang. Here is where the question of nothing becomes not just a philosophical game, but a raw, bleeding edge of science. Before that moment, before the Big Bang, what was there? If everything, all matter, all energy, all the fabric of space, and even time itself, was crushed into that single point, then what was outside that point? Our minds, trained to think in terms of before and after, scream for an answer. We crave a stage. We want to imagine a vast, dark, empty void. And then, in the middle of that void, a tiny pinpoint of light appears and explodes. That's the image we all have. But that image is almost certainly wrong. It's a trap our brain sets for us. Because if space itself was inside that point, there was no outside. There was no vast, dark void for it to explode into. There was nowhere for it to happen. And before, time itself is a property of our universe. Time is a dimension of the fabric, just like space. If the fabric was crumpled into a point, the dimension of time was crumpled with it. There is no before, because before requires time to flow. Asking what happened before the Big Bang might be like asking what is south of the South Pole. It's not that it's a secret. It's that the question itself doesn't describe anything real. This is where a mind like Richard Feynman's becomes the perfect guide. Feynman was a master of cutting through the fog of complicated language and grand philosophical statements. He would look at a question like, what existed before the universe? And he wouldn't start with mythology or even with equations. He would start with a humble, almost childlike question. What do you mean by exist? What do you mean by before? He would challenge you to define your terms. If you say a universe, you have to include everything that is physically knowable. So, by definition, anything that is before the universe is not physically knowable. It's outside the realm of cause and effect. It is, in the most literal sense, not part of our reality. It is a no man's land for science. But Feynman was also driven by an insatiable curiosity about the world. He wouldn't just stop at saying, we can't know. He would be fascinated by the attempt to know. He would be fascinated by the paradoxes we run into when we try to imagine absolute nothingness. He would invite you to play a thought experiment with him. Imagine, he might say, that we could somehow erase everything. Not just the matter, not just the space, but the very laws of physics themselves. The laws of gravity, the rules of quantum mechanics, the constants that define how strong an atom is, all of it. Gone. What is left? What are you left with? You are left with a state of pure potential, a blank slate. But here's the thing that Feynman would find hilarious and profound. A blank slate is still a concept. It's still a framework. The very idea of potential is a rule. It's saying it is possible for something to come from this. But if you have erased all laws, then you have also erased the law that says things are possible. The very notion of possibility is a law. You see, we keep trying to hold on to a little tiny piece of something to act as a placeholder for our thoughts. We imagine a dark void, but darkness is a thing. It's the absence of light. We imagine a silent emptiness, but silence is a thing. It's the absence of sound. We are trying to construct a state of nothing using the building blocks of something. It's like trying to build a dry waterfall. The very words we use betray us. The word nothing is a noun. We give it a grammatical status as a thing, and then we are trapped into thinking of it as a thing. Perhaps the most profound insight into this mystery doesn't come from cosmology, but from the tiny, invisible world of quantum mechanics. It's a world that Feynman knew better than almost anyone, having mapped out its strange rules. In the quantum world, the concept of nothing gets its final, most beautiful, and most bizarre twist. In our everyday world, a vacuum is just empty space. But in the quantum world, a vacuum is a seething, turbulent ocean of activity. It is governed by a principle called the uncertainty principle. This principle states that you can never know two complementary properties of a particle with perfect accuracy. The most famous pair is position and momentum. The more you know about where a particle is, the less you can know about how fast it's moving, and vice versa. But this uncertainty principle has a profound consequence for the concept of empty space. It says that you cannot have a state of perfectly zero energy. Why? Because if you knew that the energy in a region of space was exactly zero, you would know it with perfect accuracy, and that would violate the uncertainty principle. So, nature is forced to fudge the numbers. It allows for a little bit of wiggle room. What this means is that for extremely short periods of time, particles can literally pop into existence out of this apparent nothingness. A particle and its antiparticle can appear, live for a fleeting instant, and then annihilate each other, disappearing back into the void from which they came. Disappearing back into the void from which they came. They are called virtual particles. They are not directly observable, but their effects are. They subtly change the energy of atoms. They are as real as you or me, but they exist on borrowed time and borrowed energy. So here, in the heart of modern physics, we have a staggering discovery. Empty space is not empty. It is a frothing, bubbling quantum foam, constantly creating and destroying tiny universes of its own. The nothing of space is actually a something of immense, hidden activity. Now, take this quantum principle and apply it to the ultimate question. What if the universe itself is a kind of virtual particle? What if the Big Bang was not an explosion from a point into a void, but a quantum fluctuation from a state of no space and no time? In this view, there was no before. There was just the timeless, placeless quantum soup, a realm of pure possibility governed by no rules we can comprehend. And then, for reasons that are not reasons at all, a fluctuation occurred. A tiny bubble of space-time, a seed of potential, popped into existence. And instead of annihilating itself and vanishing, it expanded. It inflated. It grew exponentially fast, in a fraction of a second, from a quantum seed smaller than a proton to the size of a grapefruit, and then, over billions of years, to the vast cosmic arena we see today. In this picture, our universe is just one bubble in an endless, possibly infinite, quantum froth. Other bubbles, other universes, are constantly popping into existence all around us, in a dimension we cannot access, in a time that isn't time. They are separate, forever isolated from our own. This is where the question turns from physics to something that feels almost spiritual. If our universe can pop into existence from a quantum nothingness, then the question, what existed before, becomes a question about that quantum realm. But what is that realm? Is it a place? No, because place is space. Is it an eternity? No, because eternity is time without end, and this realm has no time. It is a logical phantom. It is the ultimate nothing. That is the ultimate everything. Feynman had a beautiful way of talking about these limits. He would often use the analogy of a chess game. Imagine you are watching someone play chess, but you don't know the rules. You just see the pieces moving. You watch for a long time, and you start to infer some rules. The bishop always stays on its color. The knight moves in an L shape. You build a model of the game based on your observations. But then, one day, you see a move that breaks your rule. You realize your rule was incomplete, so you revise it. You add an exception. You learn about castling. You learn about in passant. This process of refining your understanding based on observation is exactly what science does. But Feynman would point out, you will never, by watching the game, be able to deduce the name of the man who invented chess. You will never be able to deduce why he preferred wooden pieces over ivory. Those questions are outside the domain of the game. You have reached the edge of what is knowable from the evidence. When we ask, what existed before the universe? We are asking a question that may be like asking for the name of the chess inventor by watching the game. The evidence we have, the universe, its expansion, the cosmic microwave background, the laws of physics, is the game itself. We can trace the game back to its first move, the opening gambit of the Big Bang. But to ask what was happening before the game started, to ask who set up the board and why, is to step outside the game. It's not that the question is forbidden. It's that the tools we have, the tools of logic and observation that work so perfectly inside the game, are no longer valid. This is the profound and humbling realization we are left with. We are creatures of the universe. Our brains evolved to hunt, to find shelter, to navigate a world of 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension. They are exquisitely tuned to understand falling apples and flowing rivers. They are not necessarily tuned to understand the absence of apples and the absence of rivers. They are not tuned to comprehend a state where apples and rivers and space and time themselves do not exist. We stand on a tiny island of knowledge in the middle of an infinite ocean of the unknown. And the question of the origin of everything is the shoreline. We can walk to the water's edge. We can dip our toes in. We can feel the vastness of the water. But the water itself, the nature of that ocean, is a mystery. Our greatest theories, from general relativity to quantum mechanics, are the best maps we have of our island. They are astonishingly accurate, but they are silent about the ocean. So, what existed before the universe? The most honest answer, the answer that a truly scientific mind like Feynman's would give, is not a story about a god. The most honest answer, the answer that a truly scientific mind like Feynman's would give, is not a story about a god or a cosmic accident. It is a simple, profound, and slightly haunting statement. We don't know, and we may not even have the mental tools to ever find out.
And that was Professor Feynman. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.